Today, we continue to hear from the silent witnesses who were there participating in the crucifixion of Jesus in unique ways. We now hear from the spear.
Excuse me, I wonder if you could give me just a few minutes of your time. Don't say it. I know what you're thinking. I've talked to a thorn and a robe and a nail, and now I'm trying to hit you a spear. But you have to admit, I got a lot more information from those others than you expected, didn't I? Sir, I know you are of position and stature, but please give us a few moments of your time. Could you please tell us about the events of that dark Friday? You did witness the whole ordeal.
I don't have to be here. I hope you realize that. As an official representative of the government, still in active governmental service, I don't have to testify if I don't want to.
Yes, sir, we understand.
I just thought it would be better if I reminded everyone that I am still an official weapon of the government in power, and that mine is a position of responsibility and authority. In the right hands, that is.
Yes, sir, we respect that fact.
I have fought fierce battles with enemies of superior numbers and force. I have seen men die fighting for the honor of their country and their king. I have even brought enemies to their knees and to their graves in honor of country and king. I have been held at attention when the governor passed by, and I have held off angry crowds at the gate of the palace. I have pierced the flesh of would-be rebels and terrorists, and I have saved the life of my ruler on more than one occasion. I have been used by skilled soldiers, and I have been used by cowards in uniform. But no one is using me now. I am here because what I witnessed needs to be told, and it needs to be told accurately.
We respect your credentials, sir.
I have never been broken. I was always kept polished and sharpened, and my handle was rubbed with the finest of oils to keep it from cracking under the pressure of battle. Whenever I was nicked, I was immediately honed to a razor-sharp edge again. If you take proper care of your head, it will take care of you. That's what I always say.
Yes, sir. Can we please hear your testimony?
I'm on guard duty now. I think it's more of a semi-retirement than a duty. I'm assigned to crucifixion crowd control. I'm not always sure whether that means trying to keep the criminals from escaping, the crowds from killing the criminals before the government can, or if I'm supposed to protect the officials from the crowd and the criminals. Perhaps it's a bit of all of those. Whatever I'm supposed to be doing, I do it the best I can. That's what being a military spear is all about.
Yes, sir. Could you now share with us what you saw that day?
I guess the best place to start is in the courtyard. That's where I first came in contact with the accused. He was on trial for heresy, and he was also being tried for treason. They said he was a threat to the government because he called himself king. Actually, the way I heard it is that everyone else, including those who were trying him, called him a king. All he said was that if that's the way they saw it, so be it. He agreed with them, but he didn't flaunt it or anything. I really didn't see him as much of a threat to any of us. Even at my age, I could have handled any of his followers. They weren't even armed. Well, he was found guilty. And I found that strange.
Strange?
Well, there were no real charges against him. The witnesses kept telling different stories and contradicting themselves and each other. The judges passed him from one to another because none of them, not one of them, wanted this political hot potato. And when they finally found him innocent, guess what? The mob took control of the process and frightened the judges into sentencing him to death. I have witnessed many trials, and so I can testify. He got a raw deal. When the sentence was handed down, it was time to start the long walk up that hill again. I've been there a number of times, you know. Usually a person only makes the trip once, if you get what I mean.
Yes, sir. Please continue.
The trip up that hill was not uneventful. I was confusing duty, as it often is. Some of the time, I was used to hold back people in the crowd who cried and screamed that he was innocent. Some pushed toward him. They just wanted to touch him, to be healed of some illness. This was not your usual crucifixion crowd.
I see.
And yet, something made it clear that this was not the usual type of person on his way to be executed. A couple of times, I was used to wrap him on the back of his legs. He wasn't in much shape to be carrying a cross. He'd been through a lot of beatings. And his head was still bleeding from the crown of humiliation they put on him. Actually, it was a crown made of the meanest looking thorns I've ever come across. As we went along, he fell a few times. Each time he fell, I was used to prod him along. There was no effort to treat him with any kind of respect. In fact, I've never heard such a variety of noises from a crowd. There were cursing and hateful yelling as he passed by. And then, a step or two farther, you'd hear someone praying for him or telling him they loved him.
It sounds confusing.
If it sounds confusing, that's because it was. We finally made it to the top of that hill. I assumed that I'd be at attention all the time, but I was in for a surprise. The guard carrying me and a couple of the other guards got into an argument over who would get to keep his clothes. As you might know, soldiers are notorious souvenir hunters. It isn't like they were arguing over some fine king's robe. It was just a simple cloak. Well, I got tossed to the ground during the argument. They decided to roll dice to see who would get the cloak instead of cutting it into enough pieces for each one to have a memento. So while they were shooting dice, I had to lie unflatteringly in the dirt beneath that cross. Throughout this whole ordeal, I have not held my head as high as I used to, but this was most degrading. But then, so is being crucified, I would imagine.
Yes, sir.
The morning sun was getting hotter and hotter as I lay still in the dirt. At first, I was directly in the sun's rays, and I could feel my staff drying out and my head getting hot enough to scorch anyone who would pick me up carelessly. As the sun shifted, I began to cool as the shadow of the cross and the body on it passed over me. I was thankful for that relief from the heat of this totally humiliating scene. It seemed odd that I'd be thankful that an innocent man was hanging there, because I was given relief. I was refreshed, and I was even able to forgive the thoughtless guard who tossed me aside. It's amazing how different I felt in the shadow of that cross.
Please tell us how it felt. What was it like?
As I lay there, I was looking straight up at the one hanging on that cross. His head hung down, and I could see his agonized expression. He seemed like a person who was deeply hurt. I don't mean hurt from the pain of the whippings, or the long walk, or the puncture wounds of the thorns, or the penetrating nails in his hands. I mean the kind of hurt when you've been, what can I call it? The word is betrayed. That's it, betrayed. I know that feeling as I served the crummy crucifixion duty. But that's nothing compared to what he's been through.
Oh?
I heard that one of his own cabinet members had betrayed him with a kiss, and that another had betrayed him by denying to even know him, and that others betrayed him by running away during all of this. He seemed to have the weight of all the betrayals in the world on his shoulders and on his face. But even with that agony clearly seen on his face, his words were of love.
Love?
Now, I'm not a judge of character, but if I were a human being and was treated like that, you'd not hear words of love coming from my mouth, not at all. Things like, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Now that's something only a very special person would say and really mean at a time like this. And do you know what? He meant what he said. He really, really, truly meant it. You could tell it in his face, his voice, and you could see it on his face when he spoke those words of forgiveness. The agony on his face turned to a smile of assurance as though he knew that his request was granted. He looked at peace then. He was no criminal. He was no threat to the government. What this world needs is for us to be more like him. Can you imagine what the world would be like if his kind of love could be found in more people? My guard came and picked me up. I thought we were going to leave, but I heard the others mention that the bodies couldn't be left on the crosses because of some religious day or something. So it was decided to help the men die a little faster. The soldiers were instructed to break the criminals' legs. They often used a heavy mallet to do that. If anything could crush their bones, that mallet could. Well, they took care of the other two criminals as they were instructed. But then they noticed that the one called King, he had already died. So instead of breaking his legs, it was decided to check and make sure he was dead. That's where I came in. I was lifted toward him. My first thought was that I wanted to get another look at the face of this man of deep forgiveness. I wanted to be close to his gaze and to his heart. But his gaze was gone. His eyes were closed in death. His heart had stopped beating, yet it seemed as though his forgiveness was still there. At any rate, I did get closer to his heart than I had ever expected. You see, in order to make sure that he was dead, I was forced into his side with a thrust that felt as though all humankind was pushing me in, not just one lone guard.
And what did you find there?
What I found there was a broken heart, a heart that once beat for love and seemed to have been beaten by hate. But I quickly found out that that was only partly true.
Partially?
Yes, his heart had beat out of love, and his whole being was love. But hatred had not beaten this man. No, I know that for a fact. Let me tell you how I know. As I was pulled from that lifeless side, both blood and water flowed out with me. As that blood poured over me, I had a feeling shoot from the tip of my pointed head to the foot of my staff. I felt sharper than I had ever been. I felt polished to a flawless sheen. I felt as though my staff was alive, as if rooted in healthy soil again. And then, as the water engulfed me, I knew that if I had been a person, I too would have been forgiven for my role in all of this.
Well, you certainly can't blame yourself. After all, you're only you were just an instrument in the hands of others. It certainly isn't your fault.
I assume that you know that you had a very active role in all of this too. It was the sins of everyone. And that includes you and me, that broke his heart and caused him to suffer and die. That's why he hung there, because someone had to. And he didn't want it to be you or me. So he took our place.
Yes, sir. We know.
The most important part of what I witnessed was made clear a couple of days later. But that's another story. In the meantime, though, we all can share the assurance that the blood and water that flowed from that wound that I caused, the wound we all caused, flowed forth with the power to cleanse, to purify, to restore, and to renew. Isn't it interesting that a painful wound was used by God to allow His love and His forgiveness to flow out for all the world? Do you get the point?